Hi, this is Keith from BluffTitler.us, and I wanted to take just a few minutes to show you some of the cool things that you can do to create animated 3D real-time titles using BluffTitler. When we first open BluffTitler, you'll see two windows. This window up here is the preview window that shows us everything that's going on in our show. The bottom window is the tools window where I can control all of the parameters that relate to my BluffTitler show. So let's create a very simple animated title, and to get started we'll select File, New Show. And now BluffTitler creates the default show for me, which has just one text layer. Everything in BluffTitler is called a layer, and a camera and a couple of lights. Let's take a closer look at the text layer that's been created for me, and I'm going to show you some of the basic parameters that you can change to create cool titles. First, we might want to change what the title says. So I can go to my text box over here, and instead of the default text, I can type something like, my first title. And you'll see that as I'm typing, BluffTitler automatically updates the preview window to show me what I'm doing. One of the coolest things about BluffTitler is most objects are actually 3D. Let's select the text position parameter, and you'll note that I can move the text by either adjusting the sliders here to change the X, Y, and Z position of my text, or I can just click and drag inside the window. If I hold down the left mouse button, I'm moving in the X and Y directions, and if I hold down the right mouse button, I can zoom in and out, control the Z depth. Of course, I can also change the rotation of my text, so let's select the text rotation parameter, and again, by dragging in the preview window, I can move the text, and now we can really see that this is a 3D object. I can adjust the scale of my text, for example. So let's go in here to text scale, and you'll see that I can make it deep or shallow. If I want to select a value that the slider doesn't let me reach, I can actually type a value directly into the text box here. So let's say I want some extremely deep text. I could just type 10 in there, and now you'll see that my text is very, very deep. Let's go back to a more sensible depth though. The next thing I want to show you is that you can change how the edges of your text is presented, and that's done with the bevel parameter. If you go to the bevel menu, you'll see that there are a lot of different bevel styles you can select. Anything from flat, that is, it's no longer 3D, to a straight bevel, the default round bevel, or various special effects like sequined text, or tubular text, or a wireframe view. I think I'm going to go with a straight bevel for now. We can also change the appearance of the bevel using the bevel parameter. So let's take a look at that. Go to the bevel parameter, and now I've got a new set of sliders that I can use, and I can change the amount of beveling on my text, and I can also change its depth. That looks pretty good right there. If I want to get my text back in its default state, I can reset the rotation and the position. And now, of course, you can use almost any TrueType font that's installed on your system for your titles in BluffTitler, and you can change the font by either going up here to the Media menu and selecting Change Font, or by clicking the Change Font button in the Tool window. And you'll see that I get a preview of all the fonts in my system, and I can select something different. Let's select this font, and you'll see the BluffTitler updates to show me. That looks a little more cool. Now, the next thing I can do is let's change the color of the text. There's a color parameter, and each of the three sliders represent the red, green, and blue values for my text. So I can go in and just select a cool color, or if I hit F3, I can actually display the Windows Standard Color Picker. I can go in here and let's select a nice purple color for our text. I can also do things like change the apparent shininess of the text using the specularity parameter, and I can go from completely dull to very, very shiny. We can also adjust all sorts of things like the kerning and the spacing between characters. You'll see in this font my letters look a little far apart, so I'm going to go in and select the spacing parameter, and I'm actually going to move the letters closer together. There we go. And if I'm not happy with my font, I can actually just go in and change it. And it'll still keep all of the other parameters that I set. I'm going to select a slightly different font. That one's better. Now, it's great that we can select all these parameters and change the look of our text, but let's get to the animation. Now, let's say we want to make a title where this text actually flies in and then lands in this position on the screen. BluffTitler uses a keyframe-based animation system, which means that we set keyframes along the timeline down here, and this timeline slider lets me control what time each keyframe is at. And after I set different keyframes, BluffTitler will automatically interpolate between them or create all the in-between frames for me automatically. So let's go to the end of our show by moving the timeline all the way to the right, and I'm just going to hit the record button to set a keyframe. And now I'm going to rewind to the beginning of my show and set the initial position of my text. This will all make sense in just a second. Let's go in and change the text position parameter so that my text is actually behind the camera. Now, when I hit the play button, what's going to happen is the text is going to smoothly move from the first position to the second position. So I'll rewind, hit play, and there's my animated title. Of course, we can do other kinds of animations like animate the rotation of the text. Let's have it flip around 360 degrees. And you'll see that it flies in, flips around, and stops. One really cool feature of BluffTitler is I can control how the animation happens. So by default, we have a constant speed animation where I smoothly move between each keyframe, but I can actually select all sorts of different special effects, like the bouncer effect. And now when I click play, you'll see that my text bounces into place. Similarly, I can do things like a decelerate move, where it slows down over time, or something like outside, where it sort of overshoots each keyframe. Let's go back to our constant speed animation style. So this animation is pretty cool, but it's not long enough for me. By default, BluffTitler creates a 3-second animation, but of course you can change that. Go to the File menu and select Set Show Duration, and now you can select the duration in seconds for your title. Let's say you want to double it, so I'm going to go to 6 seconds, and I can either stretch the existing clip or stretch the existing show. Let's go to 6 seconds, and I can either stretch the existing show or I can extend it by another 3 seconds. I'm going to select stretch, and now you'll see when I replay this show that it's a lot longer. And there's my text zooming into the screen. Alright, now another cool thing with BluffTitler is that your bevels can actually have different materials than the body of the text. So let's add a silvery border to this text. I can do that by clicking this button, which is Attach Border to Current Layer. So I'm going to click that, and I'll get my preset menu, and this shows me a bunch of different presets that are included with BluffTitler, and I'm going to select the Silver Straight Border preset. Click OK, and now you'll see on the edges of my text I have a shining silver border. Let me rotate the text to make this more obvious. So you see now I've got a shiny border. What BluffTitler has done is it's created a new layer for me, here layer 5, and you can see the parentheses tell us that it's a child of layer 4, which is the original text. And of course I could go in and I could change all sorts of parameters here, select different effects for the shining border, change its color, etc. If I'm not happy with the preset I selected, I can go to Preset and load preset, and then I could select something different. So for example, the punk border. Let's undo that change. Of course, I can always go back to my original text layer and change parameters there without affecting the border. So if I want to go and change the color of the inside of the text, I can do that by adjusting the sliders, and you'll see that only the interior portion of the text changes. Let's go with a nice blue color. So the inside of my text is this shiny blue color, and the outside is this reflective border. And this brings us to the subject of effects. You can create all sorts of different texture effects for objects in BluffTitler using the Change Effect parameter. So if I click the Change Effect button, I can select all sorts of different effects. Let's take a look at just a few of them. Now, one of the things that we can do is add a bump map. So the bump map effect, we select Open, and you'll see that now, I'm going to move my timeline here, this text has a simulated texture on it. and you'll see that it's bumpy, and the specular highlights now highlight each of the little bumps. If we wanted to change that texture a little bit, we could actually go in and select Media, Change Effect, and now you get the Change Textures and Effect dialog. And what I can do is I could select a different picture to be used as the bump map on the text. So let's go into my Textures menu, and I've created a whole bunch of different bump maps that I can use with my text. You can use Photoshop to create these, or anything that handles normal maps. Things like Genetica is a great program for creating seamless textures with normal maps. Here's one that I created that sort of looks like an alien goo. And now, as we move the slider, you'll see that we have a completely different texture connected to our text. Pretty cool. Some effects actually have multiple textures, and let's take a look at a multi-texture effect where there's a color map and a bump map. So I select this texture under the multi-textures folder called color map bump map, and now if I go to media change effect, you can see that there are actually two settings here. In this texture, the first texture is used for the color map, and the second texture is used for the bump map. So let's go in and select a different picture. We're going to use this alien growth color map for the color, and then I'm going to use, where is it, alien growth normal map for the bumps. Now when I click OK, you'll see that if we zoom in on the text here, we've got different colors and different textures, and they're synced up because I created these to go together. If I go in here and hit reset on my the text color, which overrides the texture map, you can see what the original colors were. Now, one thing you'll notice is that the color is animating. So as I move through time, you'll see that the color goes from the blue color here to the white color I just selected and back to blue. That's not really the effect that I wanted. So let's back up. Let's delete this keyframe. We'll rewind to the beginning. And now I'm going to change the color of the text, but I'm going to click the All Keys button. This makes sure that any change that I make to these sliders gets applied to every keyframe. So now I'll reset the text color, and now I've reset it to white. And as we play the animation, you'll see that the color remains unchanged. And the color is coming from that color map that I selected in the Change Effect dialog. There are all sorts of different effects that we can select. You can try all of them out. You can have a reflection with a bump map. That's a pretty cool one. The first texture is the reflection map. Let's select one of our reflection map pictures. These actually come with BluffTitler. As you can see, I've installed many different pictures that I can use. And then the second picture is the normal map that we're using before. And now you'll see that I get this crinkly reflection. Well, that's pretty cool. Let's have a simpler text effect for the center part of my text. I'm going to go back up into Media, Change Effect, and I'm going to use just a basic texture mapping effect. This is the effect called Lightened, which is one of the defaults. So I'll just go up, select lightened.fx, open it up, and select the picture that I want to use. In this case, I think I'm going to use my leopard for a texture. And of course, you can use any image that's installed in your system as a texture for your fonts. You can also use video, which is very cool. So now we've got really crazy silver bordered leopard fur text spinning through space. You might think this is kind of tacky, but at BluffTitler we just love kitsch, and you can be as conservative or as kitschy as you like with your titles. There are many more types of layers in BluffTitler that are fun to play with. One of the coolest things is a particle layer, and you can actually have particles attached to your text. So you can do that by selecting the Attach Particles to Current Layer button. I'm going to click that, and then you'll see there's a bunch of different presets, some that I've created, and others that came with BluffTitler. And you can do things like, for example, select Sparkles. And now you'll see that there are sparkles that are attached to the text. This is very cool for adding interest to your titles and just making them just really groovy. And just like everything else in BluffTitler, there are tons of parameters that I can change for my particle layer. So if I pull down the Layers menu, now I can select the particle layer, and I can do all sorts of things like change the texture that's actually being used for the particle. So I can go into Media, change texture, and I can now select a different particle picture. I've created lots and lots of these, and you can actually download them for free by going to www.mediablitz.com. Let's select this different style of sparkle right here, and now you'll see when I click OK that I'm getting that different sort of sparkle effect. The other thing I can do is I can change how many particles are emitted, so if I move the emission parameter up I get very sparkly text. I could change the size of the particles, so I just get little sparkles maybe. Or I can do things like change the gravity effect on the particles and make them more like sparks. So now you see that gravity pulls the particles down. If we wanted to make them last longer, I could change the maximum age of the particles. You can read the online help to learn lots more about all of the things that you can do with every layer. Now when you play this back, you'll see I've got falling sparkles coming off of my text. Pretty cool. Let's go ahead and delete that layer. I can click the delete layer key, and we can try again. Let's select a different type of effect, like the heart particle. See, you love BluffTitler. Or maybe we should set things on fire. Let's select the burning text option. That's pretty cool. Anyway, you see that there's a lot of really cool stuff that we can do with BluffTitler, and you can get as crazy as you want. Other types of layers that we have in BluffTitler are picture layers and plasma layers. Let's take a look at a plasma layer. The plasma layer adds graphical interest, and if you click the Add Plasma Layer button, you've got all these different presets you can play with, which of course you can change at any time. So this is the white noise plasma layer, but we could do something like line segments or lines or circles. And of course, again, there are lots of different parameters that we can change. We can also go and select different presets. Let's go back up to our preset menu, say Load Preset, get the Presets menu back. Let's try Plasma Blobs. That's a little bit more sedate. And now you'll see that I've got this cool moving background that my text flies in over. Similarly, we can use picture layers, and you can actually use BluffTitler as sort of a compositing system. You can use just about any sort of picture format that you might have on your system, but if you use a PNG file or a Targa file, those are .png and .tga files, and those files have transparency defined, you can actually have see-through layers, so you can sort of composite objects onto your titles. So let's go in and try that. I'm going to select Make New Picture Layer, and let's select a picture of Bix, our friendly alien. Where is he? There he is. Let's use bix2.ping. And now you see when I add Bix, he's got transparency defined. And just like any other 3D object, I can say make him 3D in 3D space, and then I can change his position, and I can move him all around. And again, this is keyframeable, so let's set a keyframe there, and then we'll rewind, and let's set a keyframe, maybe like here. We'll have him up there. Let's change his rotation, spin him around 360 degrees, and you'll see that Bix flies through space, while our title also, oh, it looks like it's going to smoosh him. I guess we could make this more dramatic, and we could have Bix bounce when he hits the ground. So anyway, that's a very silly example, but you start to see some of the power of BluffTitler. I'm going to go in and delete Bix and delete my plasma layer. Now if I want to use my title in my nonlinear editing system, I can export it at this point. So I'll go to File, and I'll go to Export as Movie. And I'm going to actually select uncompressed AVI with transparency so that the black parts of my image, the background, is actually transparent, and I can then composite it on top of video in my nonlinear editor. So I select uncompressed AVI with transparency. I've got various post-processing options. If you want to make your titles look a little smoother, you can select blur, or you can actually scale them down to half size. So what you can do is you can set your preview window to double size, click scale down, and you'll get a nice anti-aliasing effect. But in this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go in, select my frames per second. Let's select standard NTSC rate, and I can select interlacing if I want to. We'll make it not interlaced. And then I click OK, and BluffTitler prompts me to save my file. Click myfirsttitle.avi, click save. And now what BluffTitler is going to do is it's going to save out each frame of the animation into a single file. And the flickering you see is the alpha channel being written out. Click OK, and now I can use that in my nonlinear editor. So here I am in Vegas, and you can see that I've added my title to one track, and it's above a video track, and you can see that I can just easily composite my BluffTitler title over my video. So obviously there's so many different things you can do in BluffTitler. It's hard to show them all in just a few minutes. But one great way to get familiar with things is to use the included examples. So if you go to Open Show and you go to the Shows subdirectory, you'll see all these different examples of things that BluffTitler can do. So for example, if you want to check out some different examples of particle effects, just open each of those shows and check them out. And so hopefully you'll get inspired and learn new things that BluffTitler can do. There are two cool add-ons for BluffTitler that I wanted to show you real quick. The first application I want to show is called Pixelangelo, and this is an application that lets you create sketches that you can use in BluffTitler. So let me just show you a quick example. I'm just going to kind of draw in some text with my mouse. If I were using my art pad, this would be a lot better. But I can do a quick sketch, write the words, the end. And now, if I save this out, and if I hit play, you'll see that BluffTitler will actually draw out the sketch that I just drew. There are a lot of different things that you can do with Pixelangelo. Couldn't possibly go into them right here, but you start to get the idea of some of the fun things that you can do with that. The other application I want to show you is called Pixorama, and this is an application that helps you create reflection and environment maps for use with BluffTitler. The other cool add-on for BluffTitler is called Pixorama, and it allows you to take panoramic photos and use them as reflection maps, or just build other reflection maps for use in BluffTitler. Here I've taken a seamless texture, and I can format it as a cube map. I can export it, and save it. And then I can use it inside of BluffTitler. So here I'm in BluffTitler, and I'm going to take my effect, select the reflection map effect, and then select my cube map that I just created as the reflection map, cube map painterly clouds, OK. And now I've got a very cool reflection map. To download my particle pack for BluffTitler and to see more BluffTitler examples, visit MediaBlitz.com. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Now go have fun with BluffTitler.